Welcome back to part 2 of the transfer window special brought to you by Sky Mobile. We're going to start this episode by looking back at some of the most memorable transfers.
I always remember on the pitch on the last day of the season, Bex whispered to me, if you remember.
Real Madrid.
The one that sort of always stands out for me is Luis Suarez, because it was a case of, how did we get him?
You cannot hold that force back. That's a force.
My contracts were all done within 48, 72 hours.
Does that tell you never asked for enough?
Van Persie was...
That hurt.
That was a dagger.
You talk about transfers at Manchester United, the most famous one that changes the course of history. Eric Cantona. Where are you then? Are you in the youth team?
Just coming, travelling with the squad because of the 3 foreigner rule in Europe, and with them quite a lot in Europe, but then not so much in the actual league games at that time, because obviously you could play the full squad, but just in and around. I mean, it was a. No one knew at the time the impact that it would have had, but it was a massive.
How quickly did you know?
I don't know. All I know is that I still say to this day the biggest moment in Manchester United's modern history was winning the league that season, because it was the moment that everything turned. Yeah. And I always remember, something. I don't name Cantona as being the player who I always like is sort of one of the top 3 players. I don't even remember best United 11. But I remember in that first season we won the league when he used to score. He was scoring the winning goals when he came back from the kung fu kick. Yep. I reckon in that season he's the most influential player I've ever seen in a season in winning the league. Probably Cristiano maybe in 2008 maybe.
Is that the same year he scored in the final?
Yeah,
the cup final?
Yeah, that's the most... Schmeichel was unbelievable, but that's the most influential outfield player performance I've ever seen in a team winning a league, from United's point of view.
Who else would you rank alongside him?
As a signing,
came into Manchester United.
Do you know what I would say? Because I think the manager said this, to be fair, because I think he's unbelievable. Dennis Irwin at like 700 grand from Oldham. Do those signings happen anymore?
Yeah.
Andy Robertson is probably a similar type of signing in that sense. Yeah. But Dennis Irwin for that level of money, Schmeichel for I don't know what it was less than $1 million.
$500,000.
Half a million. Schmeichel. Solskjaer for peanuts.
You're talking there, I think, sort of in terms of value, aren't you, in terms of money? But
I'm thinking about it in terms of just generally the actual, for like, basically the amount of money they cost to what they delivered. I mean, yeah. Schmeichel's probably the best, I think, £500,000. But then every big signing they made, usually, whether it was Rio, Rooney, Keane, Ince, they paid off, you know what I mean? And Bruce, Palace, I know.
Why do you think that was? Why do you think they all seem to work? Is that Manchester United? Is that the manager's influence?
There was a philosophy, I think, of buy-in. He wanted to bring young players through, and he wanted the best player in the Premier League. I think he thought the best player in the Premier League, the best British player in the Premier League, he had to buy. Manchester United had to buy that player. And I think that was why they always sort of pumped, whether it's Rooney, they broke transfer records for Keane, they broke transfer records for Rooney, tried to sign Shearer, tried to sign Gascoigne. So if you think about what he tried to do, he had a clear philosophy every single year. Even Van Persie, even though he wasn't British, he tried to sign the best Premier League player. And more often than not, they were British back then, but obviously now they're foreign players.
I think when we were at Liverpool, we always felt like we were probably a level below in terms of buying.
It's the money, wasn't it?
Best. Yeah, the money. You were winning leagues. We were like a top 4 team. So the one that sort of always stands out for me is Luis Suarez, because it was a case of how did we get him? It's that feeling of how's everybody else missed this? Because for me, when the best players we've had, certainly if I think about foreign players, I think of like sort of Sami Hyypiä come in, Alonso, Torres, Luis Suarez, I could name another 10. Yeah. They do it right away. So what was this feeling when people say, it takes a foreign player a year to settle? That was never my experience at Liverpool, because if someone came in and it took them a year to settle, more often than not...
We had that, though. We had that at United with Vidic, Evra, Cristiano.
But is it a year?
No, but Vidic and Evra was probably 12 months. Yeah. It probably was 12 to 18 months. Cristiano was obviously young, but it's different. It was a couple of years. I'm trying to think of a couple more that sort of like, it just took a little bit of time just to settle in a little bit.
Yeah, I think in Suarez, it's like...
With Pep sometimes players, like Rodri, Mahrez, a few of his players I think have taken...
Yeah, I think you can definitely improve, don't get me wrong, but I think when someone comes in and you get into Christmas and you still haven't seen almost a sign of something, you're a bit like, what have we got here? And my experience at Liverpool was that the best foreign players we ever had just came in and hit the ground running. I go to Suarez, I mean, you talk about influential players in terms of winning a league. Liverpool didn't win the league, but I think if Liverpool would have won the league that season when Suarez was like the best player in the league,
get more.
I think it probably would have surpassed what Cantona did, because Cantona was probably in a better team.
Yeah.
What about
Liverpool's
Torres?
team wasn't that
What about
great.
Torres as well?
I mean, the thing with Torres, I think, or what really helped Torres was playing with Steven Gerrard. And the reason I say that is Torres was a great player. But if you take that 2 or 3 year spell at Liverpool out of his career's not like off the scale. But that 2 or 3 year spell with Stevie, and listen, for Spain as well, he won the Euros, he got the winning goal. But at Atletico Madrid, I think United, Chelsea and Arsenal, who were probably better than us at the time, all looked at him and thought, nah, he's not quite good enough.
Torres played against us in 2003 in the Bernabeu for England against Spain. And me and Rio were on the right-hand side of the England defence, and he made a run into the channel, and we looked at each other, and I always remember it. And we went, what the fuck was that? Not often a player, sort of like you think, and you both look at each other and you think, that's unbelievable. The speed of him. I couldn't believe what happened to him when he left Liverpool to go to... Did Liverpool know that was going to happen? Did Liverpool feel like he was on...
Well, when we were playing...
That was a massive drop-off there.
Yeah, we were watching him every day in training. He wasn't the same player physically or mentally.
Dipped, basically.
He started getting injuries even in his second season at Liverpool, but he's still doing really well. And then his third season at Liverpool, which I think... Would that have been Rafa's last season? He was not the same player. And if you remember the World Cup final, so they won the Euros in 2008, that was Torres at his best. He was the number 9. Scores the winning goal against Germany. In 2010, he wasn't in the team. And he came on sub in the World Cup final and pulled his hamstring. And I think, even though Spain have won the World Cup, I think that was like a bit of a nightmare. The whole world's watching this. He's come on. Yeah. He's getting this tag now of being injury prone. Bang, he's on for like 10 or 15 minutes. Pulls his hamstring. Rafa then goes. Roy Hodgson comes in. And he was just in a different headspace then. He wasn't great. But what happened was, when he'd signed his contract, Liverpool put a release clause in for like 50 million, which was massive money then. But he'd always scored against Chelsea, and Chelsea were desperate for him. The only good game he had that season was against Chelsea. We beat Chelsea at home 2-0 under Roy Hodgson.
Right.
Torres scored 2. And that was like, it was like the deal was done.
Yeah.
So when we were getting the 50 million from Torres, we were like, wow, they're not getting the Torres that we know. I think we knew that at the time.
I was trying to think about, there were a lot of shocks at United of transfers, even from my first season, when he sold Mark Hughes, Kanchelskis, Ince. Ince was a massive... Ince was unbelievable for United. Unbelievable.
He's one of those players who's not talked about enough, Paul Ince, isn't he?
But just, it was unbelievable for United. And then you think about sort of Beck's leaving, or Yap leaving, or Roy, or there were some quite big shocks, you know what I mean, in terms of people leaving at the time, where you thought, that's not, you just look at it and think...
That's because they're all massive players.
They were massive players.
Leaving when they still had something to offer.
But right, I want to ask you, when you talk about massive players, I think what's interesting with Arsenal and Arsene Wenger, he had a different way of doing it when he first came in, that he'd buy players that were cheap, under the radar, people hadn't heard too much about them, and you still had unbelievable success. Yeah,
we did. That was Patrick, wasn't it? When Patrick came,
you think of Nicolas Anelka as well.
Yeah, but Nicolas at 17. Yeah, but when you listen to what was going on in France and how he got him out of Paris Saint-Germain at 17, arguably one of the best out of that Clairefontaine, academy. You speak to people like Thierry, and they always said, "Yeah, Nicolas is going to be the one." But like
he was the one.
To be honest, I'm not joking.
Unbelievable, right?
Like I said, when he came, obviously I got injured the season in 1960 when we won the league, and I think he was 18. And, you know what I mean, he took over that season. The first training session we had with him, James, you knew. Yeah. Like I say, you cannot hold that force back. That's a force coming. So you could see, wow, this guy's amazing. He's amazing. And even when I spoke to Arsene Wenger, was just talking, riffing, and he said, what was the plan? What did you want to do? Because he didn't expect Nicolas to go like he did. Because remember, talking about $500,000 he came for, he went for 23.5 million to Real Madrid. Yeah. And he really wanted, Arsene Wenger, was Thierry was going to come after that. He's going to play him on that side. Anelka's going to be in the middle. And, that's what he would have...
Well, right, it's why I say to this day the best team I ever played against domestically was that 98 Arsenal team, because Ray Parlour was the same player he was still playing in 2002-03. But the back four were better. Yeah. The keeper was better. Yeah. Anelka and Bergkamp, in my mind, were unbelievable. Overmars was, in my mind, harder to play against than Perez, even though Perez was an amazing player. And the midfield two were better than the two Invincibles in terms of Manu Petit and Vieira. That team was unbelievable. And Anelka at that point, I was thinking, so he was like Ronaldo, the Brazilian Ronaldo.
That's
almost.
What Merson said the first when he played a reserve game with him. said he's the closest I've seen to the Brazilian R9 than anything else.
Yeah, I never seen anything. The pace of him, and at Old Trafford, I remember playing centre-half against him in a game where we actually lost the league in that season. I think Pallister was injured, and we had a couple more injuries. And it was breathtakingly quick and on your shoulder. He was like, oh my God, what is that?
Well, when you talk about, you just mentioned he was only there for a few years and then he moved on.
Yeah.
I mean, what are the big ones that move on from Arsenal?
Losing Thierry to go to Barcelona and then for him to win the Champions League when that team, what Thierry was the leader of, him and Patrick and that, what didn't get to win that Champions League in 2006. When Thierry left and he went and then he won it with Barcelona, was heartbreaking because if we're going to win it, we need him. When Van Persie
was a big one.
Van Persie was
that hurt,
a real fucking dagger. That was a dagger.
Nasri, it was at the time, wasn't it?
Nasri went to City.
It was a bit of a bad one.
A few players went to City, didn't they, at that time?
We lost Cesc. Those kind of players, those were devastating blows.
The biggest one was actually looking back now, Ashley Cole to Chelsea.
Oh, God.
When I look back now, at the time...
Yeah.
Has he ever been forgiven by the Arsenal fans?
They weren't forgiven because he went on to do everything what he wanted to do and win everything that he wanted to win.
It was a big one, that.
People think it's over X amount of monies. But the fact is, can you imagine, he's a youth team player, he's come through, he's in the first team, he's done a deal, Gary. They've shaken hands on the deal, it's done, and you leave, and then you hear on the radio that he's just... You're going to say, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah, I think Ashley's got a story to tell that's different than the one that
absolutely would be different.
Do you think that's the case, especially with me and you as well, where do you think that happens even today with local players? I always felt that when I was at Liverpool, where it was a different deal to when the players were coming in because they knew you'd never leave.
Transfer Window Special is brought to you by Sky Mobile,
the network that lets you roll your data and keep it longer than anyone else.
For more information, visit sky.com/shop/mobile.
Carra, do you know something? I said for the first 2-3 years on television when I became a pundit, I don't know why players have an agent. And I've changed it, to be fair, the more obviously I got out of football, understand a bit more about club ownership and stuff. Because for my contract, I used to go and see the PFA, who have every single player's contract. Now, they're not allowed to disclose to each individual player's contracts, but I would go to them and say, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, say they're the top teams in the country. What money, and my club, what money should I be earning to get to the levels of these types of players?
Of their right-backs.
Of their right-backs or their centre-backs, that if I thought that I was around that level, and I'm playing for England or whatever I'm doing at that time, and they would give me sort of like a range of money that I would go in and ask for, and I'd say, right, OK, I'll pick a figure in there, and I would go in with that evidence, and I would go in with a piece of paper and say, look, that's what the players at other clubs and in our club are earning, and that's what I think is fair.
Is this with David Gill or Sir Alex Ferguson?
So this was with, never with the boss. The boss never was in on my contract.
Was you a lawyer or just on your own?
I went in on my own a couple of times. I went in with my dad a couple of times. So it was with Martin Edwards, the first one. Second one was with Peter Kenyon. And third and fourth will have been with David Gill. Did
you ask for more than them? Because at the end of the day, you're playing for Man United, the best team. You're England's right back.
I wasn't greedy. I was a case of, look, if that's where the sort of market is, the Chelsea at the time was sort of playing Ferrara quite a lot of money. Finnan had got a big contract, I think, at Liverpool at one point. Yeah,
well, he did.
No, he did. He got a big contract. So there was some outliers, but I always thought, well, what are United paying? What are the other clubs paying? And there was a figure there that you thought, and you know something? Other than Peter Kenyon kept me waiting for about a week, my contracts were all done within 48, 72 hours.
Does that tell you never asked for enough?
Good point, actually.
It's funny because you say that, Gal. No, you say that, James, but mine were always done very quickly. And it's something that, again, with the agents, and I'll go with you, Gal, about the agents. I wish that I just went with the PFA, went with a lawyer, because they were done too quick,
right,
especially when I was scoring at the rate I was.
I want to send a message to every single football player in the country that's professional right now. You must have an agent. I've changed my mind. But go and sit in. When you get to over 27, 28, not when you're 20, in your early 20s, you don't need to, but when you're over 26, 27, 28, you're coming towards the end of your career, you're going to have to start negotiating for yourself when you finish your career. You have to go into businesses, you have to start negotiating with players.
You want them to go into that uncomfortable situation.
Go into that uncomfortable situation and sit in there with your agent and literally watch what goes on and be part of the conversation. It's uncomfortable, but please do it. Because I tell you what, you do it 2 or 3 times, you'll start to get confident, you start to get belief, you start to be aware of what's happening, you'll start to understand the game, I just don't know why every player doesn't go in and sit there as an observer. Or the parent of the player goes in as an observer with maybe the actual agent. So that you've got someone...
Are you worried about someone doing a deal and you're getting cut out of something, you're going to lose out on somebody?
I just think for transparency, I just think for making sure you know what's going on, I think for making sure you're learning, I think there's a whole load of different reasons why football players, in my opinion, they're going to end up having to negotiate their own contracts when they leave their careers, as in different parts of their lives and different stuff. Why would you not just go and do it? I can't get it.
OK, so what's when you talk about yourself going in for contract deals, other players in the dressing room, Wrighty's spoken about players leaving for Arsenal. I mean, what were the big ones that you really felt, not even just as a Manchester United player, maybe even as a Manchester United fan?
I think Yap was the biggest one at the time where I felt like that it was questionable. And the boss has said it's his biggest mistake, and he's since in his book. That was the one at the time when I look at that transfer and think, he's the best centre-back in the world. No one's beating him. You know what I mean? No one's beating Yap Stam. He was just a powerhouse. You could literally, me and Dennis could go forward, or me and Phil, whoever it was, and you leave Yap at the back with anyone. He's a bit like Van Dijk in his peak 2 or 3 years ago, where he's just taking the ball off you. You can't get past him. A player looks to run at Yap Stam and they're just refusing it. They're passing it. That was the one that I felt wasn't quite right. I mean, obviously I didn't want Bex to leave. I didn't want Roy to leave. Didn't want Ince to leave, or players
because you were close to David Beckham, were you more involved in that situation than you would be in other ones? Were you almost speaking to the boss, trying to maybe help him navigate away to
I did go into meetings with the boss and Bex a couple of times, and it was getting difficult because Bex was getting more confident, more belief, and I look back now and think, well done to him, you know what I mean? Because it's made him what he is today, in the sense of he's been to Paris, he's been to Milan, he's been to LA, all these things he's done. It's because of his belief and his pursuit of what he wants to do. I never had that in me to say, I'll go and take on Sir Alex Ferguson, or I'll go and push him, I'll go and poke him a little bit and see how much. I'd never do that. But I think at that time, it was becoming impossible for both, really, for Bex, because he'd been there since he was a kid, for the manager, because obviously loved him and obviously brought him up through there as a kid. And then I always remember on the pitch on the last day of the season, and he whispered to me, if you remember...
Real Madrid?
No, it was Barcelona had come in, hadn't they, as well?
Yeah.
But Barcelona came in, and the club wanted him to go to Barcelona, accepted a deal from Barcelona, but then he sort of went and...
They signed Ronaldinho instead of... Because over there, the president was Laporta, actually, they come in as almost like a political leader in some ways. If you vote me in, I'll sign him.
But I think Bex was always destined to go to Real Madrid, to go to AC Milan, to go... I think he always wanted to, to experience different things. I mean, to go to America and do what he did. And get that deal he did for Miami. And you see Miami now with Messi.
Yes.
If you don't leave United, this today doesn't happen. So you can't say it was wrong. And I, at the time, was frustrated with him a little bit in the sense, because we'd grown up since we were 14 at United. And you think, how can anyone want to leave?
You're a United fan. You'd never want to leave the club. I get that. But in some ways, you're envious of that experience Beckham's got. Because you've gone into sort of a bit of an entrepreneur, hotels, meeting people around the world. There's something about that you look at and you think...
I do admire the lads that speak like four different languages or 3 different languages, or they've travelled different places, played in different countries. I do admire them and think, I don't think it'd ever change me. I'd never change leaving. I would never.
You never want to leave?
I literally, I'm so proud to say that I played for Manchester United and that's it, full stop. And after my 30th birthday, I remember saying, I had 2 years left on my contract. If they hadn't have offered me a new contract after my 32nd birthday, which they did, to be fair to them, I would have retired.
Yeah.
Wow.
I made that decision. I was only going to ever have Manchester United next to my name, because I looked at other players that had left United at 32, 33, and I'd never seen it go well. Because when you've experienced that, it's like, it's just, the
James, did you ever want to play for anyone else?
No. I was very much like that. I mean, I think me and you were pretty similar in that. I think the best players at Liverpool and United, or maybe Arsenal, your best 2 or 3 players have maybe always got a little eye on, can I get a Madrid or a Barcelona?
Yeah, this is the right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I was never that. I always knew if I was going to leave Liverpool, I was going to go down. So the thing for me is exactly what you've just said. I used to love the fact that I was obsessed with AC Milan as a kid.
I loved them. That was my team.
And that thing of like Baresi and Maldini, you can't picture them in another kit. You just always that red and black stripes. And I always wanted that. And it was funny when I first came through, I'd say that openly a little bit. To like other lads, and it's I'd love to stay. And people used to sort of laugh and take the piss out of it a little bit, saying, you want to be a lifer? That's what you used to call it. And it was all just a bit of banter and that. But I do look back now and think there's probably, well, you obviously there was a few of you. You had obviously Scholesy, Giggsy, and yourself.
But they could have left, if you remember.
Yeah.
I think Giggsy, Inter Milan came in for Giggsy. And who came in for Scholes? I think a couple came in for Scholes. And at the time, I think Giggsy, they were thinking at the time around maybe should they sell, but Scholes, I don't think they were ever going to sell. I think they would have, you know what I mean? But
do you know how many players in United's history have done that? Because even Stevie Gerrard isn't classed as a one club.
No, there's quite a few though, United. If you think about the Busby Bates, if you think about obviously Sir Bobby, who's the record appearance maker behind Giggsy. I think the top 5 or 6 are all one club.
Wow.
Transfer Window Special is brought to you by Sky Mobile, the network that easily lets you make your data plan bigger and smaller to suit you.
For more information, visit sky.com/shop/mobile.
Jude Bellingham.
Yes.
When you think, right, you're at Birmingham and Manchester United come in for you. I know it's not the Manchester United of sort of like Sir Alex Ferguson's era, but they come in for you. And Dortmund come in for you. And you choose to go to Dortmund.
Yeah. I think the top players...
And you think... They navigate how to get where he's got. Yeah. It's like...
That's management. I think his management, his family.
I think Haaland's the same. I think they know they're that good, they can choose the path. So Haaland doesn't go to sort of a giant straight away. Did he go to Salzburg? Did he go to Salzburg from Norway?
Yeah, he went to
Red Bull, Salzburg.
He was in Molde, wasn't he, with Ollie?
Yeah, with Ollie,
Salzburg, Dortmund, then he goes...
Perfect.
They map it out. But listen, let's get to the quick fire questions, right? I'll start with you, Wrighty.
Go on.
If you had to pick one club to transfer to during your career, which club would it be and why?
You know, it's a really tough one because when we were all younger on our estate, David Rocastle inspired us all to want to play for Arsenal. So to get there was amazing. But if you're saying I had to be forced, because my older brother was a massive Liverpool fan, I had an uncle who was a massive United fan, and then I played against that United side.
Well, Liverpool came for you, didn't it?
Yeah. But then there was murmurs of Liverpool with Kenny, and there's murmurs after 90 with Man United. So that's just to have that link was always nice. But it's a tough one. It's a tough one. But playing against that United side, and they won so much, I was so jealous of them. I'd probably, you know something, I don't know, I don't want to go that way because like...
Just so you can score on Old Trafford, right?
I did, but it was for England. It's a tough one. James, I can't answer that question.
You said United. Say it.
No, I couldn't tell you.
I actually am probably going to say, if it's in this country, or anywhere, I'm going to say Arsenal, because Arsenal were the club that I generally had massive respect for. When I went to Highbury and I used to walk in those sort of that old sort of entrance with the marble hall, I used to think it's a club of proper tradition. And I used to love the blazers that you used to wear, and I used to think there was quite a resemblance and alignment with what United were at that time with the blazers and sort of quite traditional. And I thought, so I'd say Arsenal.
I'm going to go for Tottenham, and the reason I say Tottenham is because when I was a kid, they were probably the first team I sort of was really aware about besides Everton and Liverpool, because my first season watching football was 1984-85, and Everton and Tottenham were going for the league.
Was that Clive Allen or...?
No, Clive Allen was 87 with
Glenn Hoddle?
Is it Glenn Hoddle?
Glenn Hoddle, yeah.
Okay.
And I always remember this as a kid, and it wouldn't happen now because of phones and stuff, but as soon as the Everton game would finish, there was always a betting shop that you'd always sort of, if I lose you in the ground to your dad, go to the betting shop, I'll see you at the betting shop. But I always remember running in, and even as a kid, I was only 7 or 8, it was how Tottenham got on. That was the first thing in the back of my mind. We were going for the league with Tottenham, right? And we'd running out.
I think I liked Tottenham when I was younger, actually.
But I sort of liked the Waddle, Hoddle.
I like Hoddle. Hoddle in his boots.
Glenn Hoddle. I love the stadium. And you know what? I scored 3 goals for them. Okay, number 2. If you could pick any player who played in the same era to be transferred into your club, who would that have been and why? Gary?
Shearer.
Wow.
Shearer, at the time, because maybe not what I thought now, but what I thought at the time, when he was playing with him for England, 95, 6, 7, and what he was doing for Blackburn at that time. I mean, he won Blackburn Rovers the league.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe we didn't get him twice. Because obviously once I'd spoken to him after the Euro 96, but I think me and Bex went to a concert with him. Brian Adams.
No, he used to do it in the past, was it?
Everything
He's been talking about.
It was Brian Adams.
I phoned the club. And we do the deal. He was taking cheer to Brian Adams' concert.
I sang everything I do for you, Sir.
Wow.
Righty.
Probably a Gascoigne.
Oh, yeah.
Watching Gascoigne. I remember playing against Gascoigne in 88 when he was at Newcastle, and again in 90. Then he went to Tottenham. Then obviously the 1990 World Cup, he was going on to be the best player. For me, he's going to be the best player at the tournament. But like playing with him and training with him, even before he got the injury. I didn't see anything like it. I always say that Bergkamp's the best player I've ever played with. But Gaza was amazing. It definitely be Gaza.
Yeah. I would say Cristiano Ronaldo. And the reason I say that is because when he actually signed for United, I think we were in for him. That was with Gerard Houllier and Phil Thompson. Phil Thompson tells the story that he thought we had him. He was speaking to the agent, and before you know it, breaks on Sky Sports News. Ronaldo's gone to United. And I think of what we lacked, probably in the best teams I played in at Liverpool, I think we had world-class or great players in every position over, say, a 10-year period. But I don't think we ever had a world-class wide player. After, listen, we had the best in John Barnes, late 80s. But I think if you go through the 90s, I don't think we ever had a player of that ilk. OK, if you were all at your peak and up for sale in today's market, how much do you think you would be worth, Wrighty?
I'd like to think that the goals that I was scoring and the rate and stuff, I'd like to think I'd be worth a couple of quid now. You know what I mean? Especially when you're looking at what they're
80 to 100?
80 to 100, because when you went to Arsenal, how old were you?
I was 28 though.
So you're probably talking like, because even Tony, now you're far better than even Tony, by the way. So no, you are far better, and I love him, by the way. But what I'm saying is, he's not being paid 60, 70 million for now because of his age. You would probably be, I think, 70 to 90 million at 27, 28.
Do you think? Yeah, because
if you're 24, by the way,
trying to recoup.
No, if you're 24, you're 100. You're over 100. You're well over 100. You're 100 million. You're well over 100.
Well,
the age might just pull it down a touch.
That's what I was thinking, because when I was playing, coming in as late as I did, I always felt like I was up against time to try and achieve and do stuff, because you're always behind it.
Yeah.
You know.
I think.
What are you going for, Gaz, yourself?
Me? I think, to be fair, I think there should be, and I say this at every level, there should be a ceiling on how much you pay for a right-back, unless they are something spectacular, a la Trent Alexander-Arnold, who sets up 10, 15 goals a season. So I wouldn't pay more. I'd like to think you either bring a full-back through the ranks, or you sign one for 30, 40 million max.
Wow.
I'd hate to think you're spending 70, 80 million or 60 million on a right-back.
I'd pay that for Trent.
But this is a phenomenon. Why would you pay £60 million for a right back or a left back? Why would you do that? I mean, seriously, why would you do that? Centre back? Yeah, maybe.
A massive part of the game now.
They're a big part.
I think they've definitely become more influential.
But you can make you can make a right winger into a right back. You can make a left winger into a left back. You can make a central midfield players into right backs. You can make now centre backs that are more mobile and pass into right backs. And
that's where the famous quote came from, didn't it?
Yeah. So my view would be, I think I'd be sort of 40 million, 45 million, because I think that I could play centre back, play right back. I wouldn't pay more than that for a right back anyway.
Yeah, I think.
What are you worth, James?
Me? Yeah, I think about that. At my best between 05 to 09.
No, you'd be probably 50, 60 million Carra as a centre-back now.
What's Gay now?
You're Gay now.
Yeah.
Centre-back would be more.
Yeah. Which player impressed you most in their first training session, Gary?
I'll go and go.
Rude. I remember scoring a goal with a strike with his right foot and thinking, when he hits you straight away, Rude. I mean, to be fair, I knew Rooney. When Rooney started with us, I just knew him straight away. Rude, for me, was the one that I didn't know that well, be honest with you, playing in Holland. And he'd been injured, hadn't he, as well, and he came. And I just remember scoring a goal. I can still see it. And we're on the far pitch, actually, not even on the first team pitch. We're on the reserve team pitch. And I thought, oh, my God, what a player. To me, it was Rude.
Wrighty.
Anelka, bro. When Anelka had that first training session at 17, I say it, and I always say it, is that it's coming to an end for you.
Yeah.
He was unbelievable, James.
Yeah.
Pace, link-up play, left foot, right foot, movement. It was like, look, what am I seeing here?
How's that feel for you?
Well, the thing is that it's not something that I was... Because of the fact he was 17, the only problem was going to be was how quickly he was going to continue to produce and be consistent. And we saw what he done, what he went on to do. So I wasn't worried about it in respects of, oh, my God, I'm out next week. But I'm thinking... This is the one.
I've got another one, sorry.
Go on.
I've just remembered, the most shocked I've ever been at seeing a player first time was Ryan Giggs at 15 playing against Lilleshall. And you remember, sometimes Lilleshall will come and play games at clubs.
Yeah.
I was sub for United's under 15s against Lilleshall. He absolutely
tore them to bits.
Killed them. I mean, literally killed them. I might have been a year younger, whatever. I was on the bench. He killed, and I thought, what the hell? I've never seen anything like that. So Giggs was the one time I've ever been shocked in my life at a player. Yeah. I thought, that's ridiculous.
I'll go for Alonso. the first training session, I remember it's just, you know, straight away, you don't want someone, the way they pass it and the noise it makes, you know, when they bang a ball into something, you think, oh, straight away, you just knew. So I had to go.
Can I just throw Scholes in just because? Scholes is the most impressive player, I think, when I was at England. Obviously played with Gazza, but Scholes, I just want to throw in Scholes.
It makes me like Jim Ryan used to say to me, the reserve team coach at United, he said, Gary, the boy cries when you pass it. The ball cries when you pass it. The ball cries when you pass it. He said that to me all the time. You say, ooh.
Right, if you could give one piece of advice for a younger player looking to join another club, what would it be?
Probably say to them, you need to research, talk to people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Be aware.
Yeah.
Learn, listen, sitting on everything,
exactly
ask questions.
Yes.
Why? How much are you getting?
Yeah.
How much are you getting out of it?
Yeah.
How much am I getting out of it? How much is everyone else getting out of it? What's the
about the
club getting
football?
out of it?
I would still say that what Gary's saying though, even with the football stuff, because you know that they're interested in you because of what you're capable of doing from the football side of it, James. So what you want to know is the people you're going in with, what their ambitions are, you know what I mean? What do they want to do? You know what I mean? If, you know, what the players are like.
So, yeah.
You just want to know. You just want to know more.
I went into, to be fair, thinking about the deal side of it, thinking transfer. But actually, if you think about it, of course, the football conversation is the most important thing. I used to think with Salford, there were some red flags, to be fair, when we used to sign players. When a player used to come and sit down with you and you'd sit in a room with them. And that sometimes you'd say, bring your wife with you, bring your partner with you. I remember once a player's wife asked the question, what days off do they get in the week?
Wow. Oh, my God.
I thought, and then they said, well, what area should we live in? And they were moving 2 hours away. They said, well, could we travel up? Because our kids are in schools. When you ask that area and things like that, they're red flags then. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I would say this to any player, actually, if you're not committed when you go into a meeting, you're not sure, don't go.
This is why you want to do do that groundwork before. Just ask questions of people.
Yeah.
You can find out now. That's what I would say to them. Don't be afraid to ask the questions because you're talking about your livelihood, your future.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Especially if you want to go somewhere, James, where they've got ambitions to win things. You know what I mean? You want to be going into the right place and it's going to be right for you.
Like, there was one point with Salford, and it was something that we learnt from another club. I can't remember who it was that told us. But it was when a player came in to sign for you, you should be showing them clips of how your team plays and where they would be in that team. And so they can tell that you've thought of it and you've imagined them being with you and sort of make them feel that you're a priority. It's been a well thought out transfer. And I think that was a really good thing to actually do. The other thing I heard was that, I don't know if it's true or not, it might be like a sort of myth, but Klopp used to sit, I think it's clever if he did, he used to have to sit with the parents and the family of the player for at least an hour in the house before he signed them, or meet them for an hour before he signed them.
I think he used to meet them.
To get to know them, to read the feeling.
Yeah, he'd say that publicly. He'd never sign a player without meeting them.
Wow. Yeah, I actually think that's so smart when I think about clubs and recruitment, because you sign them on a video or you sign them on watching them, but then actually to meet with them, you get that vibe off people, that feeling, whether they're actually ready for you or right with you, don't you, straight away, I think. But
all agreed, mate. So thank you for joining us on this transfer window special sponsored by Sky Mobile. Transfer window special is brought to you by Sky Mobile.